You know, Matt, today the music timed up perfectly.
Did it really?
With the intro. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Sports Now. Jackson Lightcap alongside Matthew Pennington here on the TKDS Sports Network. Happy Thursday, everybody. We are one day away from Friday, and a lot of the people out there are getting off work right now. You have one more day till the weekend. Matt, we don't have a weekend this weekend. It is a busy weekend for the TKDS Sports Network, where I make some announcements later on here in the show. But, Matt, we've had a great week. It's been a great week for the show. We've had a lot to talk about because this week has probably been the craziest week in the sports world ever since we've started this show back a couple months ago, back in October. And it has continued into today. A lot of news to talk about. Madness has already started across college basketball. And no, you may get mistaken. The weather outside is beautiful. There is madness in basketball. It is not March Madness. It is still the middle of January. But how about this? Over the last two nights, four of the top five teams in the NCAA have gone down. So the rankings will be really jumbled up heading into next week as well. So we're talking about all of that. Obviously, Super Wildcard Weekend kicks off Saturday with the Browns and the Texans. We're talking about all the wildcard games this weekend. We're going to be joined with Caleb Spinner from 4:30 to 5. We're also going to go in to talk about some Major League Baseball offseason because there's been some rumors that have been going out there surrounding former Reds first baseman Joey Votto. And we'll make our game picks towards the end of the show. But, Matt, a lot of coaching changes as well in the NFL. Obviously, there's been some candidates. Brian Callahan, offensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals, has been a top candidate. Bill Belichick stepped down today from the Patriots head coach. So now we've seen the greatest college coach and college football coach of all time, Nick Saban, walk away yesterday again from Alabama. And now we're seeing one of the greatest football coaches in the NFL step away from New England, not even 24 hours apart from each other. So nonetheless, Matt, a lot going on in the sports world, a lot to unpack. It's going to be a busy show. It's been a busy week, but busy shows make for some of the best shows, and I'm looking forward to the next 2 hours with you, buddy.
And yeah, I knew myself that at some point during my life, I would see Bill Belichick no longer be the head coach of the New England Patriots and Nick Saban no longer be the head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide. But both of them no longer being the head coaches of both teams in the same roughly 24 hours. No, it wasn't the same. It was within 24 hours of each other. I brought it up to you before the show. I said I would have expected to see it happen sooner rather than later just because of the reputation both of those coaches have, how long they've been coaching for. But both within 24 hours of each other in the same year, did not expect that whatsoever. But for Nick Saban, for him, it looks like he's done. But for Belichick, I think there's a lot of teams still in the market and that are looking to try to get Bill Belichick as their next head coach in the NFL.
We'll talk about that a little bit later on, especially with our very own Caleb Spinner, who'll be joining us at 4:30 to 5 o'clock. We had him on our Tuesday show. He's coming back on Thursdays. He's going to be coming on every Tuesday and Thursday from that time period, 4:30 to 5 p.m. So we're excited to have him join the team. And he's almost I'm trying to word this in the correct word. I'm trying to get the correct wording. English is tough today again, but
it's been tough for you all week.
It has. Yesterday was fine, but nonetheless, he means a lot to us. He means a lot to our show, and we're looking forward to having him on more and more. So he'll be on from 4:30 to 5 o'clock. Matt, let's shift our focus to college basketball. Before we get into the thick of things, let's recap a little bit of what we talked about yesterday. We talked about some of the teams in the southwest region of Ohio, and really in Ohio in general, and how big games both being played last night from Ohio State and the Xavier Musketeers. Xavier, really the story of their season has been close, but not quite. And the Xavier Musketeers, they fall below 500 now, 7-8. They're 1-3 in conference play. After another close game, they were in it. They lost by 5 to UConn, the number 4 team in the nation. And with UConn's win, there's a very good chance we're going to see the Huskies of Connecticut jump from number 4 to number 1 because Purdue, Houston, Kansas, they have all lost so far this week. And Tennessee lost the number 5 team as well.
And yeah, you just take a look at the fact that, yesterday in college basketball, I remembered saying that we had so many ranked teams on the road against conference opponents that were the home team. Obviously, Xavier being one of those teams. Tennessee was on the road. They lost yesterday. Clemson, they were on the road against Virginia Tech. They lost too. Ohio State was at home against Wisconsin. They were close in that game as well. But when it came down to needing to hit shots at the end of the game. Ohio State couldn't do it. They just kept fouling, and that's what gave Wisconsin an 11-point lead. For Xavier, though, against UConn, like you said, it seems like it's just gets super close to winning, but no cigar so far this year for the Xavier Musketeers. Obviously, a huge win against Seton Hall, 74-54, back on December 23rd. But outside of that, conference-wise for the Musketeers, 15-point loss to St. John's, 1-point loss to Villanova, 5-point loss to UConn. Those scores, all that tells me is Xavier being 7-8, and it was one thing we talked about yesterday. This Musketeers team is a lot better than 7-8. They are a lot better than what their record shows. And you take a look at the other games and some of the teams they've played so far throughout the year. I mean, you mentioned playing Purdue, lost that game. It wasn't super close, but they still were within 12 points of Purdue, who at the current moment is number 1 in college basketball, probably going to move a little bit, like you mentioned. Lost to Washington by 3, lost to Houston by 6, beat Cincinnati, who is in the running and in the talks for being a top 25 team. So Xavier so far this year, obviously 7-8 is not the record they want to be sitting at this point of the year, but it's also safe to say 7-8 might not be a true representation for how good this Musketeers team truly is.
And Matt, again, you take a look at the action that we've seen over the last couple of nights, just frankly in the top 5. And the top 5 is now going to be jumbled up with Purdue, Kansas, and Houston all losing. Obviously, Tennessee losing to Mississippi State as well. UConn, the only team so far this week in the top 5 that have won. I believe that we could see them get to that number 1 spot, but remember, Kansas took down UConn at the beginning of the season, so maybe that throws a wrench in plans. But nonetheless, I mean, the top 5 going to be completely jumbled up. We may be able to see Kentucky re-enter the equation as well. But again, as we were talking about yesterday, there truly is no dominant team and a team that stands out this season in college basketball. And we've reached now the midway mark of the season. And in years past and years prior, you look at the rankings, and if you go back year by year, midway mark of the season, there's already a team that you can already start to put your eye on and say, okay, that's going to be a team to watch out for in March. That's going to be one of the most dominant, if not the most dominant teams in college basketball. Gonzaga, when they were going on all their tournament runs, they were certainly on that list. Baylor as well. But Matt, so far this season, to me at least, it doesn't seem like there is a team that stands out from the rest. And ultimately, it's anybody's game. It's really anybody's year in college basketball. And not only is that going to play a factor in the top 5, it's going to play a factor in the top 10, the top 15, the top 20, the top 25, and you go down the list, because now let's talk about some of our local teams that were on the bubble on the outside looking in. With so much movement and with so much movement going on in the top 25, you're going to have lower teams beating higher teams. There's no dominant team that stands out this season. Heading into March, obviously, we're only halfway through the season, but we're going to see a lot more upsets this year, whether it's in the tournament or in the regular season, like we've already seen. And for some of the teams that are on the bubble looking to get inside the top 25, such as the Bearcats, such as the UD Flyers, that certainly plays in favor of those teams, because the 25 is going to be a constant scramble. And as long as those teams with, I don't want to say easier schedules, but when you look at their schedules compared to some other teams out of the, let's say, the ACC, obviously Cincinnati, were kind of in a different situation because they're in the Big 12. But let's look at UD. That could help them out, and that could benefit them because they don't have as many teams on their schedule in the top 25. So if Dayton's able to get into the top 25 and continue to win, this is a team that's going to climb up the ranks. And you can also say the same about UC. UC, on the flip side, in a better situation, but also in a tougher situation. As long as they can win games, they can claw their way up into the top 25. Once again, we talked about it yesterday. Big game coming up on Saturday against Baylor. College basketball this season has been a joy to watch, and we have not even reached its full potential thus far on the season.
And yeah, that was one of the reasons why yesterday when we did our hot takes, I said UD could easily be a top 12 team. It's because of all of the chaos we're probably going to see around them when it comes to them eventually probably making it into the top 25, with Clemson losing on the road by Virginia Tech by as much as they did yesterday. That's only going to help the UD Flyers when it comes to them making a push for the top 25. Obviously, Iowa State with a huge win over Kansas. Was it Kansas that they beat? No, it was Houston. Houston that they beat. That paints a picture for Iowa State potentially being a top 25 team. So you just take a look at all the teams that are currently inside the top 25. We've obviously seen BYU, Colorado State lose quite a few of their last few games, and now we're seeing some of the top teams start to lose some more games too. Obviously for them, we're not going to see as much movement. They're not going to drop from. We're not going to see Kansas drop from go from number 3 and drop out of the top 25 by losing to UCF by 5 like we saw last night. But if we keep seeing the top teams lose games consistently, and talking about UD, if they can completely run the Atlantic 10 this year when it comes to their conference schedule, and I would say even the Atlantic 10 tournament at the end of the regular season, I don't see it being completely impossible for UD to jump into the top 15, maybe even the top 12, maybe even the top 10. And there's one game, we keep talking about all the chaos we've been seeing in college basketball. There's one game coming up this weekend on Saturday that I'm excited to watch. Kansas at home against Oklahoma. Both of those teams lost on the road to conference opponents last night. TCU took down Oklahoma 80-71. UCF, newcomer to the Big 12, beat Kansas 65-60. It's safe to say that game for Oklahoma and Kansas, it's going to be a little bit of an attempt at damage control for both of those two teams. And whoever loses, I was talking about Kansas not dropping too far down, but if we see them lose to UCF and then drop a game to Oklahoma immediately after, I wouldn't see it being completely impossible for Kansas to maybe drop from number 3 to maybe outside the top 10. And for Oklahoma, if they lose to Kansas, I think we're going to see them potentially drop out of the top 15 as well.
And Matt, let's go in and focus a little bit on some of the games that were played last night. Obviously, Xavier, a season that has been close, but it has not come into fruition. 7-8 so far in the season. They lost by 5 to the Huskies. You mentioned Xavier a lot better than what their record shows. I'd have to agree with you on that, but we were talking about that game possibly being a pivotal point and a confidence boost, and the confidence booster that Xavier ultimately needs. And certainly, unfortunately for the Musketeers, that did not play out. And let's talk about Ohio State. We talked about them and their struggles in the Big Ten over the last couple of years. And this could be a great game to avenge that loss last Saturday against Indiana, going up against number 15 Wisconsin at home. A must-win game before you go into some of the gauntlet games that you have in the Big Ten. Good game to get you confidence booster. Not only that, a good game to really make you earn you some respect across the NCAA and college basketball as we knew it. They come up short. They end up losing that one by 11 to Wisconsin. So now both these teams that we said last night, big games ahead of them, both dropping. What's now in store for the Musketeers and what's in store now for the Buckeyes?
Well, it's safe to say for both of those two teams, for them, we were talking about upcoming games. We lumped UC into the same conversation as well, but for UC, it's going to be a lot more difficult with their upcoming schedule. They've got Baylor, TCU, and then I think they've got Oklahoma and Kansas immediately after. Those are two top 10 teams at the moment. After that game against TCU, Baylor is number 14 in the country. For Xavier, they've got Providence, and then I think Butler, Georgetown are their next 3 games. It's a lot easier for them to bounce back after the loss to UConn. And for Ohio State, they've got Michigan, Penn State, who they've already lost to, Nebraska, who's a tough team, and then Northwestern, who's also a tough team, before they play their next ranked opponent. I would say you brought up a must-win game for Ohio State. I don't think that was the case last night. I mean, you take a look at the standings in the Big Ten. Wisconsin was the number 1 team in the conference. They had the best conference record. They were the if the postseason Big Ten tournament started, Wisconsin would have been the 1 seed. They still are the 1 seed as we speak after last night. So I wouldn't have said it was too much of a must-win game for Ohio State, but for a confidence perspective, it definitely was a game that Ohio State wanted to win. But same can be said for Xavier and Ohio State. It's safe to say that they've got games coming up that, even though they didn't win against their ranked opponents they played at home against last night, Xavier didn't beat UConn, Ohio State didn't beat Wisconsin. It's safe to say for those teams, though, Ohio State, you take a look at their schedule, they've got Michigan, Penn State, Northwestern, Nebraska. Nebraska's before the Northwestern game, but they've got 4 games that they can easily win a majority of them to get their confidence back on track. For Xavier, you take a look at their schedule. Like I said, they've got Providence, Butler, Georgetown before they go on the road against Creighton, who's currently number 22. For the Musketeers as well, you take down Providence, you take down Butler, you take down Georgetown. The confidence is back for your next 2 games, which you would have Creighton and UConn, both road games for the Musketeers. So for both of the teams, obviously last night, not the way you wanted it to pan out, especially since both games were pretty close for a majority of the game. but I don't think it means for both Xavier and Ohio State. I don't think it's the end of the world for either of those two teams that they lost those games last night. Xavier lost to what is probably going to be the number 1 team in the country by 5. Ohio State was keeping it with the best team in the Big Ten right now, at least when it comes to the conference record. They kept it close for a majority of the game until the last few minutes where Wisconsin kept getting sent to the free throw line, and that's where we saw the lead extend by, I believe it was a 5-0 run near the end for the free throws. But for Ohio State, Xavier, I don't think those losses should hurt them too much. They should be able to bounce back with their next few games.
It is time for a break. We'll be back. When we return, we'll talk about some Major League Baseball. There's been some news. The Reds, just in the last hour, signed some help for the bullpen. More of that to come up next on Sports Now.
Let's call Daddy. Hi, Daddy.
Hi. How you doing?
So the furnace is on its last leg, babe. And I just don't know what to do.
I wish I could be there to help.
Being away is always difficult, but it doesn't mean you can't make decisions together. You can count on us to keep your family comfortable.
Hey, buddy, how's it going?
When are you coming home?
It's gonna be soon. Faster than you know it, I'll be home.
Breathe easy. Choose McAfee.
Come on, guys, let's call Daddy. Hi, Daddy.
Hi.
How you doing?
So the furnace is on its last leg, babe. And I just don't know what to do.
I wish I could be there to help.
Being away is always difficult, but it doesn't mean you can't make decisions together. You can count on us to keep your family comfortable.
Hey, buddy, how's it going?
When are you coming home?
It's gonna be soon. Faster than you know it, I'll be home.
Breathe easy. Choose McAfee.
Daddy. Hi, Daddy.
Hi.
How you doing?
So the furnace is on its last leg, babe. And I just don't know what to do.
I wish I could be there to help.
Being away is always difficult, but it doesn't mean you can't make decisions together. You can count on us to keep your family comfortable.
Hey, buddy, how's it going?
When are you coming home?
It's gonna be soon. Faster than you know it, I'll be home.
Breathe easy. Choose McAfee.
Jackson Lightcap alongside Matthew Pennington. Let's move in and let's talk about some Cincinnati Reds baseball. And Matt, as we said at the beginning of the show, it has been the craziest week in the world of sports. I mean, with what we've seen so far this week, what we've gone through so far this week, with all the coaching changes for the National Football League, for college football. Obviously, Ohio State returning a lot of their players. We'll talk about that here in about 10 minutes with our very own Caleb Spinner, who is a graduate from the Ohio State University. I see him pop up on camera. He's giving us a wave, but off screen, all the folks out there back at home cannot see him right now. He's only on our side. Lucky us. But anyway, so Matt, again, going into it, this week in sports have been absolutely crazy. All the insanity that's gone on in college basketball, and now Major League Baseball starting to get involved. I guess they had some FOMO, some fear of missing out, and now they're wanting to get involved as well. Brent Sutter, he is now your newest member of the Cincinnati Reds, as reported at 3:32 p.m. Eastern Time by Robert Murray from MLB Insider. Brent Sutter will be in the Reds bullpen next season at Great American Ballpark after signing a one-year deal. A player that's coming off a 3.38 ERA last season in 69 and a third inning. In his career, he posted a 3.49 ERA through 464 innings. He's 34 years old. So at the end of the day, the Reds are getting a veteran arm. They're getting some veteran leadership. And most importantly, in my opinion, they're getting another lefty that can complement Wood in that bullpen.
Yeah, a veteran arm. And how about going from the second worst ballpark for pitchers being Coors Field to the worst ballpark for pitchers being Great American Ballpark? I was looking it up just to make sure I wasn't going crazy. I knew the Reds had the most hitter-friendly ballpark in the MLB. And then you take a look at a survey done from 2022. Number one is Great American Ballpark for the best hitter-friendly ballpark in the MLB. And immediately behind it is Coors Field for the Rockies. So going from the number 2 best ballpark for batters to the number 1 best ballpark for hitters, it's safe to say it's not a really pitcher-friendly move going on, but still, you talk about a sub 3.5 ERA in one of the easiest to play ballparks for hitters. I think that tells you all you need to know about the pitcher and the arm that the Reds are about to get. It's a player that, even though they're in a not-so-friendly environment for pitchers, they're still able to get the job done. That's another thing, like you mentioned, not just the fact that it's a left-handed arm coming to the Reds, but also the fact that it's veteran leadership, like we've talked about so many different times that the Reds need, especially in the pitching, either rotation or in the bullpen. But also, like I said, you go from a horrible place for a pitcher to another horrible place for a pitcher. The stats shouldn't change that much in a 3.38 you said, ERA?
From last season.
From last year. It's safe to say that those numbers should be somewhat similar in this upcoming season.
And Brent Sutter, one thing that I really love about him is that we talk about the Reds. They need some veteran leadership. They need to find pitching to bring that veteran presence, because when you enter the postseason, obviously you need that veteran leadership to help propel you. That's exactly what we saw Max Scherzer provide for the Texas Rangers. You can even say Aroldis Chapman coming out of the bullpen. You can also talk and look at the Arizona Diamondbacks, who finished runner-up. They won the NL pennant, and the experience that they've had on this team. And with such a young team that the Reds have, that's good. That's a good thing in the long run. But you also need to have that veteran leadership that when goings get tough, they can bring you back together. And what the Reds were missing, that veteran leadership from the pitching staff. The Reds, they went out there, they attacked it. They beefed up their bullpen. They have a chance to beef up that starting rotation as well, but they left one player and they left one hole in that bullpen. And ultimately, you only had one left-handed pitcher in that bullpen. There was a lot of rumors, a lot of talks, and a lot of fans that were coming out there and saying, oh, well, what if Nick Lodolo or Brandon Williamson or Andrew Abbott, what if they switched over the bullpen to give that second lefty arm? Now the Reds don't have to worry about that because what Brent Sutter brings to the table. He's a seasoned pitcher. As you mentioned, he pitched in the second friendliest ballpark in Major League Baseball, with that being Coors Field in Colorado, Denver, Colorado, Mile High City. It's a friendly ballpark for a reason. And you see the numbers that he's been able to post. And not only that, the numbers that he's been able to post in his career, he's been a consistent pitcher. So he's a lefty that you can add to your bullpen. He is a veteran leader that can lead that bullpen and lead the entire pitching staff and lead the entire clubhouse for that matter. He's seasoned. He knows what it's like to pitch in tough conditions. Now going to the most friendliest ballpark in Major League Baseball. I'm expecting big things from him. Not to mention, He's coming back to his hometown. He is a graduate from Moeller High School, which is in Cincinnati. So him coming back to his hometown to play for the Cincinnati Reds, I'll go out there and say this. This may be a hot take, but from what I've seen from Brent Suter and what I've been able to I remember watching him pitch in Colorado. I remember he's bounced around. What I've been able to see from him in his pitching, he's a seasoned pitcher. He has that experience. Matt, it would not surprise me if this guy, Brent Suter, will pay off to be the best signing that the Cincinnati Reds have this season, not just for what he does on the field, but what he brings to the table off the field as well.
And yeah, it was one thing that you brought up, and I mean, I don't know how many times I have said it on this show, but veteran presence in the bullpen or just in the pitching rotation / roster as being rostered as a pitcher for the Reds, it felt like veteran leadership is what this Reds team needed. Bringing in a left-handed pitcher for the bullpen who has that veteran experience from Colorado, it's safe to say I wouldn't say it is the best veteran leadership you can get, because you take a look at pitchers like, I wouldn't say Aroldis Chapman. Well, I would say he would be a pretty good mind to have going back to Cincinnati and the postseason experience we've seen him have amongst multiple different teams. But bringing in a veteran pitcher, it is going to be a bullpen arm, but adding that left-handed bullpen pitching arm to this Reds team, safe to say that I wouldn't say it's locked in as the best move we're going to see the Reds make this offseason, but definitely could be one of the better ones as the season goes on.
And Matt, obviously now let's shift their focus to one of the players that's been in the Reds organization for, it seems like, forever, and that was former first baseman Joey Votto. This is the first time in his career that he's ever been a free agent. 6-time All-Star, MVP. Bob Nightingale today on Twitter went out there and said that he now has 3 teams expressing interest in him, and obviously kind of the back burner of Joey Votto's career, but 3 teams expressing interest in him. Would you like to see the Reds pursue him? And now, Matt, I know that on this show, for anybody out there that's watched, we've been advocates for the Reds re-signing Joey Votto, knowing that it would not be for a starting role, but it'd be for that platoon role, it'd be for a bench role, and it'd be for that veteran leadership that we talked about, what a young team needs to have. I know that we've expressed interest and we've been advocates for Cincinnati possibly trying to bring Joey Votto back for a farewell tour, if it is that bench role, for some veteran leadership in that locker room. Only 3 teams pursuing Joey Votto, according to Bob Nightingale right now. We do not know who those 3 teams are, but would you like to see Cincinnati continue to make a splash, especially because now we're starting to get in the later stages of the offseason? That means that all the players right now that are still on the board, I want to say that the money that they're expecting to make is certainly going to drop because we're getting farther and farther along into the offseason.
I would say it wouldn't be a horrible move for the Reds to maybe try to re-sign Joey Votto. I mean, we've talked about in the pitching rotation needing that veteran leadership. It's not just the pitching. It's not just the starting 5, the 5 starting pitchers for the Reds and the bullpen that's young. It's almost the entire team that's super young. That offense, insanely young. So talking about veteran leadership, we've talked about it in the pitching rotation and how we'd like to see the Reds pick up a veteran arm for the rotation or for the bullpen. We saw them just do that. I think you said it came out about an hour or 2 ago that the news came out of it. And it's not just that the Reds needed that for the pitching. They need it for the offense too. So talking about getting that veteran leadership right now, the veteran wise figure for the Cincinnati Reds would be Jonathan India if he's still in a Reds uniform by the start of next season. That would be one of the older players on the entire Reds roster. So having the Reds potentially re-sign Joey Votto, I think that, we talk about things that are only going to help the team. That's definitely one of them. He brought some life, and he even last year, we've talked about the story that came out about him helping Will Benson when he was in that dry slump earlier on in the season. He went to, I don't know if it was Joey Votto that went to Will Benson or Will Benson went to Joey Votto. Doesn't matter who went to who. Joey Votto helped Will Benson out with his swing, got him some more confidence, and then we saw Will Benson go on a tear. That's the kind of leadership that the Reds need, and I would say if you're a Reds player, that's the kind of veteran leadership I would want if I was on an MLB team right now. So talking about Joey Votto potentially going back to Cincinnati, I don't hate that move at all.
And Matt, obviously, so far this offseason, the Reds, they have made some conservative signings, but at the same time, with the core that they have, that young core that they have, I certainly think that these conservative signings should at least pay off come season time. Matt, I mean, we're just a little over a month away from pitchers and catchers reporting, so baseball season right around the corner, and the Reds continuing to make a splash in free agency. Time for a break. When we return, we'll be joined with TKDS's very own. It's Caleb Spinner till 5. We'll be back on Sports Now.
It's easy to take the air in your home for granted. But it's not just about being hot or cold. It's about having clean air. For some of us, this is critical. At McAfee, we'll provide you with long-term solutions to improve the air you breathe.
Do you need your inhaler, bud?
Oh, I'm good, thanks.
Breathe easy. Choose McAfee. At McAfee, we understand that life doesn't stop when something in your home breaks down. Our customers count on us to be there, ready when they need us.
Is there anything else you need from me?
No, sir. I have all the information I need.
Great, thanks. Just lock the door on the way out.
Thank you.
Let us get your home up and running again. Breathe easy. Choose McAfee. At McAfee, we understand that life doesn't stop when something in your home breaks down. Our customers count on us to be there, ready when they need us.
Is there anything else you need from me?
No, sir. I have all the information I need.
Great, thanks. Just lock the door on the way out.
Thank you.
Let us get your home up and running again. Breathe easy. Choose McAfee.
Jackson Lightcap alongside Matthew Pennington. Sorry, I butchered your name. And now we're going to be joined with our very own Caleb Spinner as well. Caleb, how are you doing today on this fine Thursday?
I'm doing fantastic. Am I coming through loud and clear, boys?
Loud and clear. Caleb, I see you're all dressed up. Thank you for dressing up for this special occasion. It's the 30 Minutes with Caleb Spinner on Sports Now.
Yeah, I figured it's not quite black tie attire, but it's at least a little bit more sharp than usual. No, I've got Ohio State women's basketball against Rutgers after this, so I got to wear my other work clothes.
Awesome. Well, certainly have a great time doing that. Ohio State women's basketball team certainly having a tremendous season thus far. But Caleb, obviously a great week for Ohio State surrounding their football team returning. We talked about it on Tuesday. A lot of their defensive guys returning, but breaking news today, Emeka Egbuka will be returning for the Ohio State Buckeyes, and he will be taking over that wide receiver #1 role next season for Will Howard and the Buckeyes. And the Buckeyes continuing to return players left and right. And on paper, this should be a team making a splash next season.
But there was the big hit today as well. Marvin Harrison Jr. officially declaring for the NFL draft, which is not going to do any favors for Ohio State Buckeyes fans. But you do look at that room. You look at Emeka Egbuka, what he can do. You look at some of the younger guys that they're going to put in big roles here. Brandon Inniss being one. Carnell Tate, who I know Ryan Day has the utmost respect for, considering how he was able to put 100% of his effort forward over the spring and the summer practices, despite losing his mother to a gang shooting in Chicago. So already a big mature piece of the puzzle is secure for the wide receiver room of Ohio State. Now, there are some guys that could be added to that through the transfer portal still, through commitments flipping. I know Brian Hartline has a big target on his back who just committed from decommitted from Alabama that they're expected to pursue. So this room is in pretty good shape. Obviously not as good as it could have been with Marvin leaving. However, still a chance for it to get even better. And when you add that to all the other rooms that have had guys return, you look at a pretty dangerous Ohio State Buckeyes team.
And, one thing that our very own Matthew Pennington says time in and time out, he always calls Ohio State wide receiver U. And certainly with over the last 5 or so years, I don't think that there's any other school in the entire country that can even make that argument that they would be at wide receiver U other than Ohio State. So obviously Ohio State, with what they're able to do, producing wide receivers, my mind, I don't think that they're going to miss any slack. Obviously, losing Marvin Harrison Jr., going to the NFL draft, who is expected to be a top 3 draft pick in the NFL, certainly will hurt them. But at the same time, when you're returning Emeka Egbuka, when you have Carnell Tate returning as well, as you mentioned, Ennis should have a bigger role as well. And they're also bringing in the number 1 wide receiver from Florida in the new freshman class that's approaching Ohio State so far this season as well.
Yeah, Jeremiah Smith, somebody who certainly knows that Ohio State is wide receiver U. It was reported by one of the local guys down in Florida when he announced his commitment that he had made his decision between the Ohio State Buckeyes and the Miami Hurricanes within the final 2 minutes when he took the stage to announce it, despite the Ohio State logo being on his name placard in front of him. But he said the thing that made his decision for him was taking a look back through his head and saying which team put the most NFL talent on fields last year in the history of the program in the NFL, and that was Ohio State by leaps and bounds. You think of some of the other notable programs. I know Alabama won with Devonta Smith, the Slim Reaper, but when you look at historically at what Ohio State has been able to field in their rosters in college and then successfully bring into the NFL, you can't argue that the Buckeyes are wide receiver U.
Yeah, certainly. And with what Ohio State brings to the table, and obviously on Tuesday we talked a little bit about some of those defensive players that are returning. Obviously, we talked about Jack Sawyer. We've known that for a couple of days now. Denzel Burke, it was reported yesterday, he'll also be returning to Ohio State for his senior season. And Ohio State, as we talked about, and it's been rumored after that loss against Michigan, that this class of Ohio State Buckeyes and a lot of these players that can go into the NFL draft, they did not want to leave Ohio State on that sour note. And Caleb, we talked a little bit about this on Tuesday with you, that it just truly speaks highly on the culture that Ryan Day has built and the culture surrounding that football program at Ohio State to draw players back to Ohio State instead of going and pursuing their dreams in the NFL. And again, when you look at paper with how much Ohio State is returning, with what they've been able to do in the transfer portal, it looks like they're reloading. And this is a team that on paper heading into the 2024 season in September, certainly will be one of the favorites to make it to the college football playoff. Remember, it's 12 teams next year. Not only make it to the college football playoff, but possibly have a good chance of winning it as well.
It also speaks to the quality of the rivalry. You know, it gets tossed around a lot. Is Ohio State-Michigan the best rivalry in college football? You get the Iron Bowl thrown up there in contention, Alabama-Auburn. You get Army-Navy, of course, national rivalry in that regard. But I think Ohio State-Michigan is unique in that how many players come back just to try to get one over on their rival, ignoring, at least for the time being, fantastic opportunities to go as top picks in the NFL draft. It's not like these guys are projected to go as undrafted free agents or all the way down as, seventh round slums here. These are first round, these are second round projected guys who are putting that paycheck, putting that ultimate dream on hold to come back and try to beat the Wolverines and try to get this rivalry back on track, at least in their eyes. Of course, Michigan, for things would not be getting off the track. They'd be going off the rails if Ohio State starts winning again. But I don't think there's another rivalry in college sports, or maybe even, if you look at basketball the same way, that continues to bring players away from that bright light of the professionals to take them back to college and say, you've got to beat this team before you leave.
And yeah, that's one thing when you take a look at all the players on the defense, and obviously Emeka Egbuka coming back to Ohio State. makes me think how truly bad these players really want to beat Michigan, because in a couple mock drafts, I was seeing Emeka Egbuka easily being a top 20 draft pick in the first round. And you take a look at the defense, Denzel Burke, if it wasn't going to be a first-round draft pick used on him, it was going to be early second round. So you just take a look at all the talent that Ohio State has on offense and defense returning and where those players would have been drafted in this upcoming NFL draft. I think that tells you all you need to know about the mindset at Ohio State right now. They want to win the game. The players on the field right now, they want to either end their career at Ohio State with a win over Michigan and that be their last game against Michigan, ending in a win. It just goes to show that Ohio State, the players, they are hungry to beat Michigan, especially with what's happened the last 3 years. And that's why, to me, it was a little surprising Egbuka came back. I was not surprised at all. Marvin Harrison Jr. going on to the NFL draft. I mean, probably going to be a top 3, maybe guaranteed top 5 draft pick, maybe even top 3. But when it comes down to everybody else, like I said, Emeka Egbuka, I've seen in a couple mock drafts, he was around the 20 range when it came to first-round draft picks. So talking about all the players coming back to Ohio State, it's safe to say that they really want to take down Michigan. I'm not saying that's the only reason why everybody's coming back to Ohio State, but when it keeps being hinted at towards every single player's returning letters and speeches that they're giving and posting on all over social media, it's safe to say that 0-3 against Michigan the past 3 years is one of the reasons and one of the things sticking in all the Buckeyes' minds right now that are returning to next year's team. Kind of tells you all you need to know about how badly those players want to take down that team up north.
And Matt, obviously you take away the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry. Yes, that does play certainly a big factor in these players returning to Ohio State because they don't want to go 0-3 against Michigan. They don't want to leave Ohio State on a sour note. But again, as I talked about it before, Ryan Day has a big part to do with that. Being able to have that draw and that interest for those players to come back instead of pursuing their dreams in the NFL. And obviously, I'm not saying that they're never going to be able to pursue their dreams in the NFL. It's just going to have to wait a little bit longer. But obviously, I just feel like Ryan Day gets he gets way too much hate and unwarranted hate from the media and from some Ohio State fans and from some college football fans in general, because I don't know if there's another coach out there that has as much draw that Ohio State does from the culture, from the coaching staff, and from that rivalry with Michigan to be able to draw some potential top 20 draft picks in the upcoming NFL draft back to college to play one more year. It speaks highly on the culture. It speaks highly on the university. It speaks highly on the fan base, I think, as well, because let's face it, without the fan base, I mean, none of this would be possible. The fan base is what makes the rivalry go round and round. And of course, that big Michigan rivalry as well. And as we saw it again this season, we saw Michigan get by Ohio State. They won the Big Ten championship again. They went to the college football playoff. They ended up being national champions. Ohio State, I said this on Tuesday, they were sitting on their couch watching that, and I'm sure that they were saying, man, if only we were able to beat Michigan this season. That left a sour taste in their mouth, and I don't think it's any surprise that after that 2 to 3 days after the national championship and them witnessing that is when we're seeing this rush of players returning for the Ohio State Buckeyes.
And I forget where I heard it. I know it was yesterday and somebody said it, but they said Ryan Day does not lose games, he loses the wrong games. And that speaks to the fact that his coaching record is incredible. Far more victories than defeats on his record here. I believe the last I checked, it was over a 94% winning percentage when he was at Ohio State. Now, that was before Michigan this most recent time and before Missouri, so it's probably down a little bit, but you can still say in the 90% range with being a head coach at Ohio State. So, yeah, is he going to get a lot of criticism from this fan base for losing to Michigan? Sure. That comes with the territory. You know, when you coach at Ohio State, when you play at Ohio State, that's the game that you know going in matters to fans. Fans will tell you that's the game that matters. And frankly, everybody else who might not be in Columbus wearing scarlet and gray, they know that's the game that matters as well. I always like to say, if you're looking at an 11-1 season, let's just say, as a failure because Ryan Day couldn't beat Michigan, my go-to question is always, okay, let's flip it around. If Ryan Day lost every single game of the season but beat Michigan, are you keeping him on the staff? Well, no, of course not. Then don't say it's the other way around. One game does not make a season. One game does not determine whether a coach is successful or not. So stop pretending it does. It's it's fair to say it's not a normal game. I get it. That's part of the rivalry. But this guy has weathered so much more storm than I think he deserves to at this point. I do think, though, because this is what you bought into when you chose to take over for Urban Meyer, you've got to start winning. And yeah, one loss to Michigan might not be enough for firing, but 4 in a row and a program that still can't win in the CFP is an issue.
Caleb, I certainly agree with everything you just said there. And also, another factor that you also want to bring into account, remember when Jim Harbaugh took over at Michigan, Ann Arbor was ready to run him out of the entire state of Michigan after dropping his first couple games against Ohio State before he was able to change the narrative. It takes time. It takes time, in Ohio State, at least over the last couple of years, it seems like they have not had a consistent team. They had a great offense with C.J. Stroud, not a great defense. This season they had a great defense, not a great offense. So certainly is some factors to pay attention to. And next season, I think will be the most complete team that we see under Ryan Day at Ohio State. It is time for a break. Caleb Spinner with us here on the TKDS Sports Network. Caleb, we invite you to join us. We're going to go in and we're going to give some thoughts on the upcoming Super Wildcard Weekend if you want to stay with us. I think he's ready.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Let's go, Browns.
Time for a break. We'll be back on Sports Now.
Every day, we find ourselves on a path full of decisions.
It's me.
Sometimes small and sometimes big. Sometimes alone and sometimes together. At McAfee, everything we do is done with your comfort, health, and convenience in mind. She always wanted the best for you, and now you can rest knowing you've provided the best for her. Breathe easy. Choose McAfee. Every day, we find ourselves on a path full of decisions.
It's me.
Sometimes small and sometimes big. Sometimes alone and sometimes together. At McAfee, everything we do is done with your comfort, health, and convenience in mind. She always wanted the best for you, and now you can rest knowing you've provided the best for her. Breathe easy. Choose McAfee.
We welcome you back here in Sports Now. Jackson Lightcap alongside Matthew Pennington. We're also joined with our very own Caleb Spinner, host for the TKDS Sports Network, their new show, What the Puck. Again, we're clear. We're in the clear. It's not a cuss word. It's puck, like hockey puck. So for everybody out there saying, Oh, he said a no word. It's not a no word.
I feel like you're going to clarify that every single time you
I have
say
to.
it.
It's so close, and Caleb,
And I've got to add in
who
here
you
too
are, what you are, and it makes complete sense with the hockey show. I hope that's been going well for you. Make sure to tune into that one Monday, Wednesday, Friday on the TKDS Sports Network, 10 to 11:30.
Now I've got to add in too, in case you're wondering how in the world our boss approved that, it was his idea. It was not my name. It was his idea. So if you ever feel like reporting that to HR that I get too close to, as Jackson calls, a no word, the boss already knows.
It was his idea, and
Not going to lie, that makes sense too. That makes total sense.
Yeah, that fits. That checks out.
we like to have fun here at the TKDS Sports Network. But anyway, new show, What the Puck, hosted by Caleb Spinner, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 10 a.m. to 11:30. Make sure to catch him rant tomorrow. Caleb, what are you talking about tomorrow on What the Puck?
Well, tomorrow I don't think we're going to have a lot of ranting here. We're going to be listening to the Steve Rollick press conference previewing Ohio State's upcoming game with Notre Dame over this weekend, Friday and Saturday. I will be in attendance for it. I can't pass up an instance when Notre Dame comes to town. That's just good old-fashioned Big Ten hockey in the Schottenstein Center. But then also we'll be previewing the weekend of Ohio hockey. I was going to say Ohio State hockey, but not just the Buckeyes. We mean hockey in the state of Ohio with the Cincinnati Cyclones, the Toledo Walleye, the Cleveland Monsters, there's another one I'm forgetting, the Columbus Blue Jackets, of course, here. We were going to be talking about all of it tomorrow. A lot of games over the weekend that we'll talk about on Monday, but we'll preview them tomorrow at 10 o'clock.
All right, Caleb, now let's move into, I know what you're excited to talk about, Super Wildcard Weekend kicking off this upcoming Saturday. We're going to have games Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Remember, it was a couple of years ago that the NFL expanded the playoffs from 6 teams to 7 teams, and now we have games in the wildcard that are being played on Monday Night Football as well. So Wildcard Weekend certainly has changed over the last couple of years. I think it's for the better. It just provides a lot more entertainment for all the folks at home, and it gives the players a lot more opportunity in the NFL. And Caleb, obviously, I know that you're Cleveland Browns, Matt. I know you're Cleveland Browns. They are the 5 seed. They're going to Houston. But take a look at the entire playoffs, Matt. We're going to it a little bit here in hour number 2 of the show as well. But any hot takes? What are you expecting this weekend for Super Wildcard Weekend? And what's your takes ultimately for the entire NFL playoffs?
Look, I'm still wrapping my head around how great the scriptwriters have been for this opening round of the playoffs. You get Mike McCarthy returning with the Dallas Cowboys. They're hosting the Packers, his former team. That's already going to be fantastic. You get Matthew Stafford and the LA Rams going up to Detroit to play a game against his former team. That's an incredible story. You get the Cleveland Browns going down south to Houston to take on former Ohio State Buckeyes quarterback C.J. Stroud. There's just so many storylines to follow along with in this playoff here. Now, and in terms of the entire thing, you're obviously going to say Ravens 49ers are the favorites. If you want to go chalk through the bracket and you just pick the higher seeds all the way through, you're going to end up with number 1 against number 1, the Niners and the Ravens. However, wouldn't it be nice, as the Beach Boys said, if you get the Browns and the Lions in a Super Bowl? 2 teams with probably the most trashed on fan bases in all of the NFL. Not that they're the villains, not that everybody loves to dog on them, but that they have been through so much over the last, I was going to say over the last few years, but I'll just expand it out to the entirety of their franchise's history. Wouldn't it be nice if they both got a shot at the greatest title in football in general, all at the same time? That would be a heck of a game.
And Caleb, you mentioned obviously the Browns and the Lions. They've been around for quite some time. They've never made a Super Bowl appearance, but there is a third team in the playoffs as well that has not ever made it to a Super Bowl, and that is the Houston Texans as well. So Houston and Cleveland coming up this upcoming Saturday to kick off the playoffs. I don't think that we could ask for a better game. C.J. Stroud, an air-heavy quarterback. He loves airing out the ball. He put together the best rookie quarterback season of all time, going up against that great Browns defense with Delpit. He's going to be returning to the secondary as well, so it's going to be a tremendous game. And then, of course, on Saturday night, you have Tyreek Hill and his return to Kansas City to face the Kansas City Chiefs. That game is expected to be played with a wind chill of -30, 0-degree temperature at Arrowhead Stadium. And then, of course, 3 games Sunday and then Monday Night Football as well between the Eagles and the Buccaneers. A lot of great games coming up this weekend. And this season, frankly, let's face it, for the National Football League has been one of the more crazier seasons that we've seen. And a lot of that could play a factor because of all the injuries we've seen. And the players that have made it and the teams that have made it into the postseason have, A, either stayed the healthiest in the league, or B, have faced adversity and found their way to get there, such as the Cleveland Browns. And of course, CJ Stroud, he missed a couple of games as well. So it's certainly going to be an incredible playoffs to cap off an incredible season. I mean, this season had a lot of uncertainties. It was very unpredictable throughout the season, and I'm expecting a lot for the playoffs as well.
Yeah, the execs over at Netflix and Disney are foaming at the mouth because you can turn a movie out of any one of these franchises' seasons this year. They've all got their fair amounts of rising action, climax, and the concluding action, the falling action, if you will. I would like for the Texans to get their bag, if you will, with the fans. However, it's a tough bounce that they came up against the Browns first round, and I got to side with my guys, So, unfortunately for them, they can have it. They can have the Super Bowl when the Browns are done with it. I was going to say after this year, but the Browns ain't done with it after 1 year. No. This is going to be like Golden State. We're going back to back. If you want to go Little Dicky, we're going back to back to back to back to back till we stop rapping, till we stop playing football. We're just going to continue making it happen until they say it's no longer fair for the Cleveland Browns as an organization to be existing and to play football. But you mentioned the wind chill as well over there in Kansas City and Miami. You got to wonder if maybe Tyreek Hill has gotten soft. Maybe Miami has gotten his skin too used to the sun, and that's going to hurt him now. He's played a variety of cold games when he was with the Kansas City Chiefs in Arrowhead, but now has he maybe gotten soft? Is that going to affect the product we see on the field this weekend? I don't know. All I know for sure is I will have a nice spot on the couch with a cold one in my hand watching it all go down.
So at least you're living some of the cold. You said the cold one. It's going to be cold at Arrowhead Stadium. Caleb, we have a few more minutes before we head into hour number 2 of this show. And before I know that you have to get off to the Ohio State women's basketball game coming up tonight. So just a few more minutes. Mm-hmm. Matt, you and I, in hour number 2 of this show, we're going to go into depth about these playoff games. We're going to give all the folks out there on our honest opinions. We're going to make our weekend game picks upcoming in hour number 2. So anybody out there watching, make sure to stay with us. But before we let Caleb go, I want to go around the horn real quick. And Matt, you're involved. I'll take part in this as well. Caleb, you lead us off. What's your Super Bowl matchup this season and who wins it and why?
You're going to ask me to go realistic with this prediction instead of what my heart says. You can't argue with the 49ers with what they've been able to do in the NFC. I think they're a fantastic team. You look at how the Eagles were up until they started to crash and burn in the last bit of the season. The 49ers have seemingly just gotten stronger. So they're definitely, I think, my pick to win the NFC at least and punch their ticket to the Super Bowl in that regard. I don't as much like the AFC picture. It would be an easy thing to go with the number 1 seed, the Ravens. However, I feel like the Ravens are a vulnerable team when you look at their season so far. They have played it close with a lot of teams and allowed some teams like the Browns, like the Steelers, to beat them and beat them good in certain occasions. So I don't know that the flock, as they're called, can escape the AFC playoffs with as sure of a lock as the 49ers can escape the NFC. And that's me putting my bias aside against the Ravens. I know that they stole the Browns franchise from Cleveland in 1994. I'm putting all of that on the sideline and still saying there are plenty of teams in the AFC that could take down the flock. So, when you look at the favorites coming out of the AFC, I would probably say Kansas City, San Francisco, even though Kansas City's not their strongest. But I honestly think the Browns have a chance at playing the 49ers in the Super Bowl. It's my honest opinion.
So my take on this, I think what Caleb said about San Francisco is pretty much spot on. When it comes to the NFC, you look at consistency for all the teams, and there's one team that's been a little bit more consistent than pretty much any other team in the NFC right now, and that is the San Francisco 49ers. They have had moments this year where the consistency wasn't there, but you take a look at Dallas, they've played some pretty good teams. They've beaten some pretty good teams pretty well, but they've also been absolutely demolished by pretty good teams as well at times throughout the season. Tampa Bay, I wouldn't say it feels like a charity case with them being in, just because the NFC South is not good whatsoever. Detroit, they've played pretty good against some good teams this year, but they're the 3 seed, and they've got to draw the Rams in their first game of the playoffs. The Eagles, as Caleb said, kind of crashing and burning right now. Green Bay, they've looked good. I would not be completely surprised if they end up taking out Dallas in the first round, but that's just because it's Green Bay versus Dallas. You never know what's going to happen when that's a postseason matchup, but I think San Francisco is going to come out of the NFC, and to me, the only reason it might not happen is turnovers, but I wouldn't be surprised if Buffalo comes out of the AFC. Realistically, I would say Baltimore, Cleveland, Houston, Buffalo, maybe throw Kansas City in there. All have, even Miami, you can put them in, heck, I'm going to put every single team in the AFC in because
every team but the Steelers is what you mentioned.
Well, the Steelers don't have TJ Watt, too, so you also have to think of that. But you take a look at all the teams in the AFC, it's a lot more of a blurry picture as to who's going to come out of it. NFC, I feel pretty confident with San Francisco. AFC, I don't feel confident picking anybody in the AFC, but I'm going to say San Francisco versus Buffalo is who I feel is going to be the Super Bowl, because one thing we've talked about when it comes to, obviously, it's a difference between high school and professional sports, but talking about getting on runs and being in the right place at the right time and going on runs when needed, Buffalo has absolutely gone on a tear throughout the past month and a half to get themselves to this point. So it would not surprise me if they continue that run in the postseason, take down Pittsburgh in round 1, and keep running through the AFC to make it to the Super Bowl.
So real quick, before I give my Super Bowl predictions, I do want to possibly say this. Caleb, can you see us right now on camera?
Yes, I can.
Caleb, I have mentioned this to Matt a couple of times off air, and he does not see it. But have you ever seen a picture of Bengals quarterback once Joe Burrow got hurt, Jake Browning?
Yes. Yes, I have.
They look very similar. Like, I don't know. Maybe I just think that, but I think that they could be twins. He's dying of laughter, so I think he sees the resemblance.
Well, all I'm going to say is what we've seen from what we saw on that Browns-Bengals game last week with the, I'll say, woman, even though I'll take out all the adjectives of beautiful, gorgeous, stunning, whatever, that Jake Brown is dating. Matt's love life has a very encouraging future if he looks like Jake Browning. And I can see it. I can admittedly see it. I'm with you on there, Jackson.
It's a compliment, but no, I know that. So I'm going to go into this, and you guys have just taken the easy way out. And I know it's cliche to just take the easy way out, but I am going to go with both number 1 seeds in both the NFC and both the AFC. And I will say this before you roll your eyes at me, Caleb. I have good reason to.
I already did.
You look at the San Francisco 49ers, and I agree with both you guys on this one. There is no other team in the NFC that is as dominant as the San Francisco 49ers. They're a team that have been in the NFC Championship back-to-back years. They're a team that have just come short over the last couple of years, even back when they went to the Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo and they lost to the Chiefs. They've been right there in the thick of things. They just have not been able to get over that hump. This season, I think that they have the veteran leadership and the capabilities to get over that hump. Book the San Francisco 49ers in the NFC. For the AFC, I agree with you guys in this. The AFC is a lot more clustered and a lot more blurry within the AFC, but I am going to go with the number 1 seed, not because they're the easiest out, but because this stretch of the Ravens' schedule has certainly stood out to me. You look at their game against the Rams, where they won 37-31. They're a playoff team. 23-7 win over the Jacksonville Jaguars. They were a playoff team all the way up until week 18. At that time, that was really the start of the Jaguars' downfall. Then these two games right here, they stand out to me. The San Francisco 49ers, the number one team in the NFC, beat them on the road 33-19, and then they beat the Dolphins, who were in complete control of the AFC East until last week. Now they're the number 6 seed. They win that one 56-19. And say what you want about the Miami Dolphins and how they have not been able to beat a good team so far this season. They've struggled against teams over 500. When you beat a team 56-19, to me, that's way more convincing than if they were to beat them by just a couple of points. I don't care any of the narratives that are going out there from the Dolphins. They still beat an NFL team, a playoff NFL team, 56-19 by 37 points. The Ravens, I said this earlier in the year, and I'm eating my words. Back when they started off the year 3-2, I called them the most overrated team in the NFL. It was one of my hot takes, and they must have heard that, because ever since then, they have been angry. Nonetheless, they've earned the number 1 seed. They went through that gauntlet of the schedule that even back in the middle of the season, I was questioning that they would get through. They did it with ease. And in my opinion, I think that, yes, you can make a case for especially the Buffalo Bills, because they're playing their best football right now. They can arguably be the hottest team in the NFL. But you look at what the Ravens were able to do, especially in the last weeks of the regular season, and what they can bring to the table. It's not Lamar Jackson can run the ball. They have a great rushing attack that he can also air it out, and the defense is very underrated. I'm sold on the flock, as you call them, Caleb. Give me the Ravens and the 49ers. It'll be a rematch of the Super Bowl we saw about a decade ago. I see you shaking your head.
I mean, you at least gave a good backing up, instead of just saying, like my dad does. My dad picks chalk through March Madness. He just picks the higher seeds, and I go, Dad, there's no fun there. He looks at me and he goes, Soup's my nickname. He says, Soup, there are people who get paid more money than you and I will ever see in a lifetime to make these odds out there in Vegas. They do their homework. These teams are seeded the way they are for a reason. Even if you allow that small percentage chance of some underdogs, if you just pick chalk, you will still more than likely win your bracket pool. So get on me when I start losing. And he's won his bracket challenge. I think it's like 16 of the last 25 years.
Wow. Insane. So
yeah.
I know it's a cliche answer, but nonetheless, I think that there's good reason. 49ers, Ravens, plus they're also the two colors in a Super Bowl 58 logo. So I know that we've all seen the conspiracy there, but
oh my goodness.
Caleb,
tinfoil hat, Jackson. Tinfoil hat.
Caleb, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us for the last 40 minutes of the show. Matt and I are going to move on to hour number 2 of the show. Have a great time today at Ohio State, watching some Ohio State women's basketball. We hope you have a great time at work, and we hope to talk to you once again on Tuesday. But Caleb, first, I'll talk to you this weekend. We have, I believe, 24 games to call with each other this weekend. It's going to be busy, but looking forward to seeing you again.
Yeah, absolutely. Take care, guys. Matt, I'll see you when I see you next. And Jackson, I will see you on Saturday at Pick Central.
Looking forward to it. More announcements to come, but it is Classic in the City. Alongside Matthew Pennington, that's Caleb Spinner. Once again, thanks for joining us. We're going to take a break. When we return, we'll continue our NFL playoff talk here on Sports Now.
It's easy to take the air in your home for granted. But it's not just about being hot or cold. It's about having clean air. For some of us, this is critical. At McAfee, we'll provide you with long-term solutions to improve the air you breathe.
Do you need your inhaler, bud? Oh, I'm good, thanks.
Breathe easy. Choose McAfee. It's easy to take the air in your home for granted. But it's not just about being hot or cold. It's about having clean air. For some of us, this is critical. At McAfee, we'll provide you with long-term solutions to improve the air you breathe.
Do you need your inhaler, bud? Oh, I'm good, thanks.
Breathe easy. Choose McAfee. It's easy to take the air in your home for granted. But it's not just about being hot or cold. It's about having clean air. For some of us, this is critical. At McAfee, we'll provide you with long-term solutions to improve the air you breathe.
Do you need your inhaler, bud? Oh, I'm good, thanks.
Breathe easy. Choose McAfee.
Jackson Lightcap alongside Matthew Pennington. Caleb Spinner has departed from us. Sad face. Hour number 2 of this 2-hour show. Thank you for joining us here on Sports Now. A lot of busyness coming up this weekend for the TKDS Sports Network. Obviously, Wittenberg men's volleyball, their season will start tomorrow. Watch those games live at Wittenberg Athletics, powered by TKDS Sports, or you can also watch it on the TKDS Sports Network as well. The Hardwood Classic, Day 2, coming up Sunday from the Cintas Center. Make sure to join Tim Capel and George Howard for all of those calls on the TKDS Sports Network. And then this weekend at Pickerington Central, Classic in the City. 8 games over the next 3 days from Pickerington Central, featuring some of the top teams in the entire nation and also some of the top teams from Canada as well. Girls basketball, high school basketball tournament at Pick Central. Caleb Spinner and I will be there on the call. Matt, I believe you're going to make it out there Monday to give much provided rotation because we'll be going on 16 games until you show up. So when you show up, it's going to be like, hallelujah. But nonetheless, so certainly a lot going on for the TKDS Sports Network. Looking forward to it as well. But Matt, let's continue on. Let's take a look at the entire and the full playoff schedule. We'll make our game picks here in just a little bit. Kicking off Saturday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, the Browns versus the Houston Texans will be played on NBC. Then later that night, the Miami Dolphins will take on the Kansas City Chiefs at Arrowhead Stadium, and the second edition of the Freezer Bowl. That game will be played on Peacock. And then on Sunday, first game on CBS will be the Pittsburgh Steelers going to Buffalo to pay the Bills. And then at 4:30, we will see the Packers take on the Cowboys on Fox. At 8:15, we'll see the Rams take on the Lions on NBC. Last but not least, we'll see the Eagles and the Buccaneers face off on ESPN/ABC. So unlike in years past, the NFL is not going NFC, AFC, NFC, AFC. It is the first 3 games of Wildcard Weekend are the AFC. The next 3 games of Wildcard Weekend are the NFC. A lot of great games in this slate. And Matt, there is one game that I have circled and an extra star next to on my calendar and on this schedule, and that's the Sunday Night Football game between the Rams and the Lions.
Yeah, that's one of the games I'm obviously, as a Browns fan, really looking forward to Cleveland versus Houston to kick off the playoffs this year. But yeah, Rams versus the Lions. I mean, Matt Stafford did so much for the Lions in his tenure in Detroit. Now, in the playoffs with his new team, who he's already won a Super Bowl with, the LA Rams have looked good so far this season. They had moments earlier on in the year where they had some struggles, and then Stafford got hurt, but pretty much ever since he came back, that team and that offense has been electric, and it's been insane to watch. And then you got the Lions with Jared Goff now. Former LA Ram. They switched spots pretty much between the Rams and the Lions. So it's going to be a pretty fun game. It feels like almost every single game right now in the NFL for the playoffs has a story. You take a look, Cleveland, obviously, it would have been more of a story if Deshaun Watson was the starting quarterback for the Browns because they'd be playing the Houston Texans. You've got Tyreek Hill, his return to Kansas City for the playoffs for Miami. We mentioned, as we just said, Jared Goff, former team, the LA Rams, coming to town. Matt Stafford, former team, Detroit Lions. They get to do battle against each other. And then Mike McCarthy, head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, hosting his former team for the playoffs in Green Bay. It's safe to say whoever was writing the script for this week, like Caleb said, their hand must be on fire right now with how good of a script they put together this week. But I think it's going to be a pretty fun weekend for the playoffs. And you talk about games you're looking forward to. The one thing that it pains me every time I see it pop up on my notifications on my phone. We talk about, and you brought up Grant Delpit dressing for practice and actually practicing with the team now. Same day, Denzel Ward, knee injury in practice, questionable to play in the game against Houston. So it seems like for the Browns, no matter what happens, however many players they get back off of IR or however many players come back to the team after an injury, something's around the corner that's not going to be good. You get Grant Delpit back, one of the better players in that secondary for the Cleveland Browns, just to have one of, if not your best corner. The only reason I say one of is because Martin Emerson has looked phenomenal so far this year for the Browns. One of your best cornerbacks goes down. So, well, I wouldn't say goes down, but injures himself in practice and is questionable for the playoff game against Houston. So it seems like with this Browns team, there is no catching a break when it comes to the injury bug for the Browns. I mean, we've talked about it so many different times. The percentage of cap space that is currently on IR or done for the season for Cleveland, I think it's above 25%. And if it's not, it's above 20% so far on the year. I think it was 26 last I saw. But still, Cleveland has not been able to find a way to get rid of the injury bug. It's been plaguing them pretty much since week 1. So to me, it was another thing I saw talking about Cleveland. I would say both Cleveland and Houston fan-wise kind of feel the same way. They're elated that they made the playoffs. Me as a Browns fan, I'd love to see the Browns win, and I've brought it up a few times. There was one team to knock out Cleveland. I would want it to be Houston because of C.J. Stroud. But talking about both of these teams, I've seen a couple different Texan fans, and I wouldn't say myself as well because I want to see the Browns win. But you can't be upset with the season that came about for Cleveland and Houston. You take a look at last year, both teams struggled a ton throughout the regular season. Both missed the playoffs. Coming into this year, there was question marks, and it wasn't really anticipated that either of these two teams would make it into the postseason. And now they get to play each other in the first round of the first game of the Super Wildcard round. So as a Browns fan, I am pumped that they made it into the postseason. Crazy enough that it's Joe Flacco coming off of his couch leading this football team all the way to the AFC wildcard round. And then Houston, I can't be any happier with what C.J. Stroud has been able to do. Me being a diehard Buckeye fan, I always want to see Ohio State players succeed. And the one funny comment that I saw, Nico Collins, one of the top receivers for Houston, played at Michigan. C.J. Stroud played at Ohio State. The best thing that I saw commented from C.J. Stroud, because I think it was a comment after their game against Indianapolis, a reporter asked him saying, hey, you know that obviously Nico Collins went to Michigan and his team is playing, Michigan's playing in the national championship game coming up. And C.J. Stroud was, yeah, we both don't like talking about it that much. We kind of made a deal that we don't talk about it that much because I never beat his team. He never beat my team. So there isn't much to be said about it. But as a Browns fan, obviously I want to see them win in this first round. But if there's any team in the NFL that I would still be upset the Browns lost, but I wouldn't be as upset, I'd love to see Houston continue the run that we've seen them on this year. But like I said, being a Browns fan, I don't want to see that happen. But if it does, I'm not going to be as upset as, say, the Cleveland Browns losing to Kansas City in the first round or the Cleveland Browns losing to Buffalo in the first round of the postseason.
And Matt, I'll go out there and say that, and you alluded to a great point, and I'll go out there and say this. I don't necessarily think this is a hot take. Now, although Titans, Colts, and Jaguar fans very well may disagree with me on this, and that's okay. But from an outside perspective, I think that the Houston Texans are the easiest team in the NFL to root for, especially with right now with what they've done. C.J. Stroud, one of the most humble players in the league, will give all glory to the man above. And, what he has done in his rookie year has been unprecedented. and what he's been able to do. Let's take a step back away from CJ Stroud as well. You have a rookie head coach. You have a possible offensive rookie of the year candidate who I think will win it. You have a possible rookie of the year defensive rookie of the year candidate as well on the defensive side of the football. This was a team that last season picked number 2 in the NFL draft. They were the second worst team in the NFL. They trade up, they get the number 3 draft pick as well. The front office has run this organization and has turned this franchise around. And I think it's safe to say 9-8 so far for the Houston Texans this year, coming off a horrific year last year. I think it's safe to say that the best is yet to come for the city of Houston and the Houston Texans. We talk about some of the most dominant teams in the AFC over the last couple of years, such as the Kansas City Chiefs. They come to mind. Obviously, the Buffalo Bills, they come to mind. Cincinnati, I know that they had a down year this year, but they certainly come to mind. The Ravens, they've been in the playoffs over the last couple of years. You can start to see that, in my opinion, I think we're going to start over the next couple of years, start to enter Houston in that conversation as well because of how young they are. And just like how we talked about, the Chiefs window has opened up to win a Super Bowl a couple years ago with Patrick Mahomes' rookie contract has taken the league over by storm. You could say the same thing with the Bills when Josh Allen was on his rookie contract. You could say the same thing about the Cincinnati Bengals when Joe Burrow was on his rookie contract. And now you're going to start seeing the same conversation happen with CJ Stroud when he's on his rookie contract. And I'll say this, the Texans, they're in a better situation than all 3 of those previous teams we're talking about because their defensive core and their offensive core are all on rookie contracts. They can go out and sign veteran leadership, and it doesn't even have to be core players like the Bills had to pursue, like the Chiefs had to pursue, like the Bengals had to pursue. The Houston Texans are in the best situation right now in the NFL, and them getting to the postseason after last year when they struggled, there's high expectations for Houston, and it would only grow higher the deeper this postseason run goes to. But go back to what I was saying. With what CJ Stroud has done, with what DeMeco Ryans has done for the Houston Texans, I'll go out there and say this. I think that the Houston Texans right now are the easiest team to root for in the National Football League. And again, if you're a Browns fan, plug your ears. If you're a Colts, Titans, and Jaguar fans, maybe plug your ears. But from an outside perspective, and Matt, you can unplug your ears. You're unbiased enough. From an unbiased perspective, there's not a doubt in my mind, at least, that right now the Texans are the most fun team in the National Football League to watch, and they're the easiest to root for.
Yeah, and like I said, if there's any team in the playoffs and if the Browns end up taking down Houston, there's no team I want the Browns to lose to. But like I said, with how much I've been rooting on and how fun it's been to watch CJ Stroud throw the football around the field, there was one thing I've seen and I've heard a couple different times when it comes to talking about CJ Stroud. It seems like with how he throws the football, he was born to throw a football. I mean, I've talked about, or I've seen and heard people talk about the fact that it seems like with CJ Stroud, how accurate he is, how confident he is throwing the football. He could probably hop out of bed, suit up in a Texans uniform, go play football, and probably end up throwing for 350-plus yards, have a 70-plus% completion percentage, and probably throw 3 touchdowns in a football game. If he had a 1 o'clock game, he wakes up at noon, goes to the facility or goes to the field, warms up, gets ready for the football game. He'd probably still throw for over 300 yards. So talking about, as a Browns fan, obviously, with the Browns in the playoffs, there is one team I want to see win the Super Bowl, and that is my Cleveland Browns. But if there's any team out of all 13 teams technically, because the Browns could end up beating the Browns, they could end up losing the game by themselves. But you take a look at all the 13 teams that can knock the Browns out of the playoffs. Well, not all 13, because the Browns aren't going to be able to play every other team in the NFL or every other team that made the postseason. But the fact that Cleveland drew Houston in the first round pains me a little bit because I want to see both of these teams make good runs this year in the postseason, but one of them is going to have to fall in the very first game.
And Matt, obviously, real quick before we take a break, I know that there's been some controversy going on in the NFL, and Matt, that's certainly what we like to dabble in. We like to give our opinions on this. Saturday Night Football, Miami Dolphins at Kansas City Chiefs, and this has been a consistent theme that we've seen not just for the NFL, but for every single major sport. Big games like this, obviously Thursday Night Football has done this. There's been some baseball games that have done this, But remember when the major sports in their playoffs in the NFL, the NHL, the MLB, the NBA, they were all on a channel that everybody was able to get, whether it just was antenna TV or cable TV. It was easy to access it. Now we're starting to see streaming services come into fruition, and the Dolphins-Kansas City Chiefs game, the only way you could watch that is from a pay-per-view service on Peacock. To me, I don't like that. I don't think that that's good. I don't think that that's good for the game. I think that viewership ratings is going to drop. And we talk about the biggest goal in sports is to get the next generation into it. It's something that you could do to keep your mind off things. It's something that you want to get involved at. And when you're watching that at a younger age, you're certainly able to get involved in that. If you want to watch the Dolphins and Chiefs game, now, if you're at a younger age, you may not be able to afford that. And I'm talking little kid age. And maybe in some situations, the parents, that's their favorite team. They've been able to watch it on antenna TV all this season. They finally get to the playoffs and they can't afford to get a Peacock. It just takes viewership away from the game. It takes quite a bit away from the game. And it takes away younger generations wanting to get into the game. Now, obviously, if it's just one game in Super Wildcard Weekend, it may not be that big of a deal. But at the same time, this could prelude into being something that we see more. And it's not just the NFL that's starting to go to that. We are starting to see Major League Baseball go to that more regular season than not. The NBA has gone to that a little bit more. The NHL has gone to that. It's just becoming an occurring theme right now across the sports world. And it's a theme that ultimately I think could devastate the ratings in general, the viewership in general, and over time the sport in general as well.
And yeah, to me, the only way it doesn't have a negative impact is if it's only Peacock that ever gets the rights to stream games outside of cable TV. If we see multiple different platforms taking multiple different games.
And that's where it's trending.
If that ends up being the case in the NFL, it's going to cause problems. And it's going to end up being an issue. I think when it comes down to live viewing on TV, I'm pretty sure the Kansas City area is still going to be able to watch it on normal TV. And I don't know about Miami or not, but I think the only demographic and only area in the country that you're going to be able to actually see the game outside of Peacock might be around the Kansas City area, but that's just because that's where the team plays. So, yeah, I don't really agree with it. And the only reason that I think it is becoming a thing is because of how much money these streaming services are giving to the NFL to essentially have the rights to certain games on certain times and everything. But it's like you said, it's only going to, in all reality, as time goes on, if it continues to be multiple different platforms, like if Disney Plus gets Monday Night Football, I think we've already seen Amazon Prime get Thursday Night Football. You would take a look at, I think it was Sunday night was where Peacock took over. Say you start getting into the 1 o'clock games, the 4 to 4:30 games. If you continue to see games during those time slots continue to get taken by different streaming platforms, to me, like I said, the only way it works is if you do it through one platform. If you do it through one platform, you talk about the fact that it's going to decrease viewership of games. If you do it through one platform, and like I said, if it's only Peacock or only Amazon Prime that does it, then you just have to pay for that one service to be able to watch a certain specific number of games. But the fact that it's Amazon Prime doing it, you've got Peacock doing it, obviously you've got the major TV networks and TV companies getting their games as well, but it's like you said, it's only going to, I would say, it's only probably going to cause problems. Because if you're limiting access to games to people behind a paywall, essentially, all that's going to do is tank viewership for that game. If a person is either not able to pay for the subscription or just doesn't want to bother paying money to watch the Chiefs play the Dolphins, and they're like me personally, not gonna watch the game because it's on Peacock. I might end up honestly using my dad's account if I figure out the login info and whatnot.
Oh, now you said since you said that, you're gonna be thrown in Peacock jail. You're not gonna be able to do that. Your dad's account's gonna be suspended.
They don't know my dad's account. The
easiest way to do it is go to a restaurant, but at the same time, I just think it's bad for the game, especially number-wise in the future. It is time for a break. When we return, we'll make our Super Wildcard Weekend game picks. That's up next on Sports Now.
Daddy. Hi, Daddy.
Hi!
How you doing?
So the furnace is on its last leg, babe. And I just don't know what to do.
I wish I could be there to help.
Being away is always difficult, but it doesn't mean you can't make decisions together. You can count on us to keep your family comfortable.
Hey, buddy, how's it going?
When are you coming home?
It's gonna be soon. Faster than you know it, I'll be home.
Breathe easy. Choose McAfee.
Come on, guys, let's call Daddy. Hi, Daddy.
Hi!
How you doing?
So the furnace is on its last leg, babe. And I just don't know what to do.
I wish I could be there to help.
Being away is always difficult, but it doesn't mean you can't make decisions together. You can count on us to keep your family comfortable.
Hey, buddy, how's it going?
When are you coming home?
It's gonna be soon. Faster than you know it, I'll be home.
Breathe easy. Choose McAfee.
Come on, guys, let's call Daddy. Hi, Daddy.
Hi!
How you doing?
So the furnace is on its last leg, babe. And I just don't know what to do.
I wish I could be there to help.
Being away is always difficult, but it doesn't mean you can't make decisions together. You can count on us to keep your family comfortable.
Hey, buddy, how's it going?
When are you coming home?
It's gonna be soon. Faster than you know it, I'll be home.
Breathe easy. Choose McAfee.
Well, it is officially time to make our NFL Super Wildcard game picks. Jackson Lightcap, he's Matthew Pennington, as we welcome you back to Sports Now and the TKDS Sports Network. Once again, busy upcoming weekend for the TKDS Sports Network. Day 2 at the Hardwood Holiday Classic at Xavier University on Sunday. Great games featuring a lot of the great teams from the Cincinnati region in high school basketball. Also some from Kentucky. Make sure to purchase your pass at www.tkdssports.com. And you can also watch Classic in the City as well, one of the top girls high school basketball tournaments in the entire country. That's live from Pick Central in Columbus. Looking forward to that. Caleb Spinner and I will have the call for all 3 days. Make sure to buy your pass at www.tkdssports.com. And everything else that I want to say, just visit www.tkdssports.com or follow us on social media platforms at TKDS Sports. Drop us a follow as well on Twitter at Jackson Lightcap and at mpennington88. Matt, we are moving on to Wildcard Weekend. Matt, you're the Browns fan. You kick us off. Cleveland Browns at the Houston Texans.
Well, you obviously know who I'm going to pick in this game. I'm going to go with the Cleveland Browns in this one. Obviously, the last time these two teams played, the Browns won it pretty convincingly, 36-22, but Houston did not have C.J. Stroud in that game, and they have him for this one. But there's one thing that we've seen with Houston's offense so far this year when they've played against high-caliber, high-octane defenses. C.J. Stroud has had his worst passer ratings against the better defenses he's played so far this year. The Browns, when you take a look at the stats so far this year, arguably a top 3 defense in the entire NFL. And obviously C.J. Stroud, talking about the defenses he's played where he didn't have that good of a passer rating. He couldn't have had that happen against Cleveland because he didn't play in that game. But you mentioned it earlier as well. Delpit back for Cleveland. Obviously Denzel Ward now questionable after suffering that knee injury during practice today. So it's, to me, it's going to be a lot closer of a game than we saw a few weeks ago when these two teams played each other. Obviously, Cleveland was up pretty big against Houston and then pretty much did Cleveland Brown things and made it a closer game when it came down to the end of the game, when it came down to the wire. But I think Cleveland, they've got enough on that defense, and we've seen what Joe Flacco's been able to do with the offense. Obviously, the interceptions are not something you want to see, but the other thing that those interceptions tell me about Joe Flacco and his age and his confidence, and in what he's been able to do, is what I just pretty much said. He is confident throwing the football right now with this Cleveland Brown offense. You take a look at the fact that under Joe Flacco, this offense has looked the best it has looked all season long. I think that's going to continue in this game against Houston. It will still be a closer game than we saw 36-22 a few weeks ago, but I am going to give the edge to Cleveland. I'm going to say final score, I'll go 27-23. Cleveland takes down Houston.
Matt, this game's going to be an incredible game. Obviously, Houston, with what they've been able to do on that defense, a very young team. C.J. Stroud as well. Compared to the Cleveland Browns, maybe a little bit more experience and a little bit more season of a team. Matt, Cleveland, they're a great team. Houston, they're a great team. I'm going to go OH. Say it.
I-O.
OHS or
good job. Give
OH.
a round of applause
all right,
for messing
here's what I'm going to go with. I got to restart.
I was going to say, you want to try it again?
OH.
I-O.
Dogs. Woof, woof, woof.
Oh, no, you're trying to be like Pat McAfee now, aren't you?
Give me the Houston Texans.
Yep, called it.
Give me the Houston Texans. I'm following in the great footsteps of Pat McAfee and what he was able to do between the Georgia Bulldogs and the Alabama Crimson Tide. Matt, obviously, nowhere near Pat McAfee. He's a legend. He is an absolute legend. A lot of respect for what he's been able to do in a lot of his show. You know, he's at top of the sports world right now. We could, if we strive to be just as half of great as what he has made his show to be, I think we'll be very successful. But Matt, yeah, give me the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans, they are a young team. This is a team that has had to go through the depths. They've had to rebuild that roster. They are a very young team. C.J. Stroud, I think he's an air-heavy quarterback. Who's going to get the better? Is it going to be C.J. Stroud, or is it going to be that secondary from the Cleveland Browns? Give me C.J. Stroud and the Houston Texans. Houston does not lose at home. I mentioned that this is the team that's in the best situation. They're only going to gain more confidence the more and more they win. I think Cleveland, I think they're going to hit a little bit of a wall, especially with resting their starters last week. Houston, they already have played their first playoff game because they had to win that game last week against Indianapolis to make it to the playoffs. They're at home. Give me the Texans in this one. I think it's close. The Texans end up winning it. I'm going to go final score 35-34. It's going to be a game-winning field goal. Actually, never mind, because that doesn't necessarily make sense. Give me 38-37 game-winning field goal.
Still can't get over that you tried to do the Pat McAfee.
And it was an
right
epic
there.
fail.
Yeah,
We'll go back and watch that at the end of the show.
Like you panicking yesterday trying to hit the
That was
audio
funny.
button at the
That
end.
was funny.
That was hilarious.
Moving on to the night game, Miami Dolphins versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Matt, I'm not necessarily sold this season on the Kansas City Chiefs. They've had a lot of struggles. The receiving room has been absolutely atrocious. But you look at who Miami has lost in this game. No Jalen Waddle, no Raheem Mostert. I know Bradley Chubb has been battling some injuries. This is a Dolphins team that's been banged up over the last couple of weeks, and the last couple of weeks of the regular season has not been kind to them. It seems like we have a team that has such high expectations entering the postseason, and then they hit a brick wall into the postseason. This season, I think it's going to be the Miami Dolphins. Another factor in this one, where is Miami? The most south point of Florida you can possibly get. What is the average temperature in Miami? Warm. You go to Arrowhead Stadium with a 0-degree kickoff time, negative 30-degree wind chill is what is being expected for this game. Kansas City does not lose this game at home. They don't lose many playoff games at home. Kansas City and the Chiefs end up winning this one, and I don't think it'll be close. 31-14 KC.
I'm going to go with the Chiefs as well on this one. It was a stat that I heard last night. I don't know if it is Owen, whatever the number may be, but Tua in cold weather games, when I say cold weather, I think the stat was pulled at below 45 degrees. I don't think he's won a game when it's been colder than 45 degrees. I don't think that's going to play too much of a factor because these are professional athletes we're talking about here. some of the players for Miami might have grown up in a very, very cold part of the country. Not to say that it's guaranteed they did, but talking about Raheem Mostert, he played football at Purdue. That's not the warmest place in the country to be playing football. So talking about, are the players for the Miami Dolphins ready for it? It's safe to say people are saying the weather's going to have a massive impact on this game, and Kansas City is going to be, they're going to be welcoming this cold weather. Tell you what, both of these teams probably do not want to be playing this football game in this cold of weather. I mean, obviously Kansas City has a little bit of an edge when it comes to being used to playing in the cold weather, but if the wind chill's negative 30, I guarantee you 80% of the roster doesn't want to go out and play in negative 30-degree wind chill weather for a football game. But that, I think, could also somewhat play into Kansas City's chances of winning. It's obvious, like you said, Miami being one of the warmer areas to play a football game in the entire NFL. Kansas City, going to be one of the coldest places we've seen a football game played at so far this year. Probably going to end up being one of the coldest games we're going to see all year long. But I'm going to go with Kansas City in this one. I don't think the cold's going to be too much of a factor for this Miami Dolphins team. I think the inconsistencies against good teams is what's going to hurt the Miami Dolphins. You take a look at Kansas City. We've been talking about, and it's been talked about so much this year, that they don't really have a good receiver. Rashee Rice has looked pretty good. Isaiah Pacheco, obviously, he's a running back, but he hasn't looked that bad for Kansas City so far this year. So give me the Chiefs. I don't think it's going to be as lopsided of a game, but I'm going to go Kansas City. Let's say final score, go 27-17 final score.
Pittsburgh, the number 7 seed, just sneaking into the playoffs, going to Buffalo to face the Bills, the number 2 seed.
I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills in this one. Ever since that overtime game against Philadelphia, this Buffalo Bills team has just looked like they've been playing on a completely different level as opposed to what we saw earlier on in the year. 5-game win streak right now. I talked about how, to me, they could easily be the team representing the AFC in the Super Bowl. If they don't have any... If Josh Allen doesn't have turnover problems like we've seen him have multiple different times this season, and another thing people want to talk about, all his turnover problems in the game against Miami last week, second half he was 14 for 15 throwing the football. So that kind of throws the 2 interceptions he had earlier in the game. I wouldn't say it throws him completely out of the window, but with one of the interceptions being an interception thrown into the end zone that got returned out of the end zone for about a 4-yard gain, and Miami had to start the ball throwing 3 or 4 yard line. I don't think that hurts the Bills all that much because, like I said, talking about Joe Flacco throwing the football, it shows Josh Allen is confident throwing the football. And for the Bills, talking about how good this team has looked, let's take a look at Pittsburgh. Probably, well, I don't know if it's guaranteed or not, but T.J. Watt getting hurt last week, I don't think he's expected to play. I've even seen it was funny how I saw this picture in this post, but J.J. Watt decided to. Essentially,
I did see that. He posted it.
He posted a picture of him in a number 90 Steelers jersey and asked, do you think they would notice? Pretty much saying that, hey, I can take the place of TJ in this game. But I think TJ Watt being out for the Steelers, if I'm not mistaken, their record without him since he's been on the team is 1-11. I think that's going to play factors into this game. Buffalo, they've looked just so good on offense. The defense has looked solid all season long. Pittsburgh, no TJ Watt. I think that's going to also play a big factor, so I'm going to go with Buffalo in this one. Give me the Bills. I'm going to say final score, we'll go 34-20.
Matt, you pretty much just summed up exactly what I was going to say. Pittsburgh, they're led by the defense. I love what Mason Rudolph has been able to do so far for the Pittsburgh Steelers this season. Does that continue against the very underrated Buffalo Bills defense, I beg your pardon, but Buffalo... Josh Allen, everybody wants to talk about his turnovers. Nobody wants to mention about the exact number of plays that he makes throughout the game to win. Josh Allen, you can hate him, you can love him. He gets too much hate in this league, and he still is a top 3 quarterback in the NFL. Buffalo wins this one. I'm going to go with a final score. Buffalo, I do think that Pittsburgh's defense will still keep it somewhat close. Buffalo wins this one by a final score of 24-3. I think Pittsburgh's offense is going to let them down against a very underrated Buffalo defense. Time for a break. We're talking NFC coming up next when we return.
Come on, guys, let's call Daddy. Hi, Daddy.
Hi!
How you doing?
So the furnace is on its last leg, babe. And I just don't know what to do.
I wish I could be there to help.
Being away is always difficult. but it doesn't mean you can't make decisions together. You can count on us to keep your family comfortable.
Hey, buddy, how's it going?
When are you coming home?
It's gonna be soon. Faster than you know it, I'll be home.
Breathe easy. Choose McAfee.
Come on, guys, let's call Daddy. Hi, Daddy.
Hi!
How you doing?
So the furnace is on its last leg, babe. And I just don't know what to do.
I wish I could be there to help.
Being away is always difficult, but it doesn't mean you can't make decisions together. You can count on us to keep your family comfortable.
Hey, buddy, how's it going?
When are you coming home?
It's gonna be soon. Faster than you know it, I'll be home.
Breathe easy. Choose McAfee.
Come on, guys, let's call Daddy. Hi, Daddy.
Hi!
How you doing?
So the furnace is on its last leg, babe. And I just don't know what to do.
I wish I could be there to help.
Being away is always difficult, but it doesn't mean you can't make decisions together. You can count on us to keep your family comfortable.
Hey, buddy, how's it going?
When are you coming home?
It's gonna be soon. Faster than you know it, I'll be home.
Breathe easy. Choose McAfee.
Back here on Sports Now, we're going through our Super Wildcard Weekend and our game picks. Jackson Lightcap Matthew Pennington, 5:47 p.m. Eastern Time. Hopefully all the people out there listening to us are through their rush hour traffic. Matt, let's go into it. Our middle game sandwiched in between the 1 o'clock and 8 o'clock game, kicking off the NFC Super Wildcard Weekend. The Green Bay Packers taking on the Dallas Cowboys. This one, I believe I'm to start it. Give me the Dallas Cowboys in this one. I love the emergence of Jordan Love, but Dallas this season, they've looked like a great team at times. They've looked like a horrific team at times. But the Dallas Cowboys, if they could find their groove in the postseason, they could certainly challenge the San Francisco 49ers for that top spot. I do think that they beat the Green Bay Packers at home. I think it'll be a final score of 28-7 in favor of the Cowboys.
I'm going to go with the Dallas Cowboys as well in this one. If there's any games of the ones I'm picking right now that I feel the least confident in, it's this one because of how Dallas has been in the postseason over the past couple of years. But I think Dallas is going to be able to take down Green Bay. Obviously, love for the Packers. I talked about it before the season started. I was pretty much saying that we're going to need to see a sample size to see how good he is. He's proven so far this year that he can be that guy in Green Bay. There have been moments where he's shown some signs of struggling, but now they're in the playoffs. So talking about Jordan Love struggling this year, obviously you can bring up moments throughout the year, but look at where the regular season ended. Green Bay's in the playoffs. They're the 7th seed. So a great year for Green Bay. I think Dallas, obviously, they've also had a great year. CeeDee Lamb has been phenomenal for the Cowboys all season long. But I'm going to go with Dallas in this one. It'll be I would say, probably going to be a closer game between these two teams. but give me the Cowboys. I think it'll be a higher scoring game because of how good both offenses have looked at times this year. I'm going to go with Dallas. I'm going to say 38-34 final.
Coming up next, the Los Angeles Rams at the Detroit Lions. That's a late game on Sunday night.
Rams versus Lions.
I have my pick if you need a break.
This one's tough. I think I'm going to go with the Detroit Lions in this one. The Lions, they've just obviously winning the NFC North with how good the NFC North has ended up being this year. Obviously, you've got teams like the Vikings who fell short of making the playoffs. You have teams like the Bears who fell just short of making the playoffs. But it's safe to say when you got Green Bay, Detroit, and then two teams that were pretty consistent in fighting for a wild card spot until the last few weeks of the year in Chicago and in Minnesota, you're playing in a tough conference, and the Detroit Lions pretty much ran through it this year. So give me the Lions. The Rams have looked phenomenal. I think this game is going to be the closest of any game we're going to see this weekend. But give me Detroit. I'm going to say 31-30 final score.
Matt, give me the Los Angeles Rams in this one. The Rams are a very underrated team, and I think the Rams, what's proven out to me, they've won 7 of their last 8 games. After starting the season, they struggled. They were trying to count up the losses. They were 3-6 to start the season. They finished the season winning 7 of their last 8. And in those 8 games, they took down the Seahawks. They've taken down the Browns. They lost by 6 to the Ravens. And obviously, they played some teams that they should have beaten. But obviously, you want to beat those teams how you should beat them, and that's exactly what the Rams have done. The Rams right now, you can make an argument that they're one of the hottest teams right now in football as well. And I'm sorry, Lions fans, I do think that drought is going to hang on one more year, but they are close of breaking that playoff drought. They have not won a playoff game since 1993. That is the longest active streak in the National Football League. Rams win it, though, in Detroit. Close game, 21-20. Los Angeles Rams win over the Lions. Monday Night Football, Eagles versus the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers, as you mentioned, maybe charity getting them into the playoffs. They were winners of the NFC South, only going 9-8, and frankly, the NFC South was the worst division we saw this season in all of football. I think that plays a factor. The Eagles, yeah, they're the 5 seed, a much better team than the 5 seed. They struggled in the NFC over the last 6 weeks of the season. They ended the season 1-5, but I think that the Eagles will get back on track. I do think that they're going to take down the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in this one by a final score of 28-24. Eagles will move on to round number 2. Then that may be where the Eagles have to worry.
Yeah, this is where, for me, I talked about Tampa Bay potentially being a charity case for making it into the playoffs, but I'm going to reciprocate the sentiment I talked about with the Buffalo Bills, the fact that they're on such a good win streak right now. They've looked really good over the past month and a half, and that's why I have them potentially being the team to represent the AFC when it comes to the Super Bowl. I'm going to stick with those kinds of guns talking about Philadelphia. They have looked horrendous over the past month and a half. There's no other way of putting it. We talked about a month and a half ago this team potentially being the number 1 seed in the NFC.
We jinxed them hard.
And
we jinxed them way hard on this show.
They absolutely fell off a cliff. And also, another reason I might be picking and siding with Tampa Bay is because Baker Mayfield's our quarterback, and how much I like Baker Mayfield when he was with Cleveland and now him with Tampa Bay. So that might be a little bit of me liking Baker Mayfield bias coming into the equation, but like I said, it's a home game for Tampa Bay. They've done good at home so far this year. Philadelphia has looked pretty bad over the past month and a half of football. I very well could be proven wrong with this one, but I'm going to go with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in this game. I'm going to say final score, I'll say 31-27, but I'd say that's probably going to be, at least for me, probably the bigger upset that we're going to see in this playoffs.
Seeding-wise, it's not an upset. Record-wise, it is. Just the unique matchup of 4 versus 5. Time for a break. When we return, more NFL talk coming up next when we return.
Daddy. Hi, Daddy.
Hi.
How you doing?
So the furnace is on its last leg, babe. And I just don't know what to do.
I wish I could be there to help.
Being away is always difficult, but it doesn't mean you can't make decisions together. You can count on us to keep your family comfortable.
Hey, buddy, how's it going?
When are you coming home?
It's gonna be soon. Faster than you know it, I'll be home.
Breathe easy. Choose McAfee.
Come on, guys, let's call Daddy. Hi, Daddy.
Hi.
How you doing?
So the furnace is on its last leg, babe. And I just don't know what to do.
I wish I could be there to help.
Being away is always difficult, but it doesn't mean you can't make decisions together. You can count on us to keep your family comfortable.
Hey, buddy, how's it going?
When are you coming home?
It's gonna be soon. Faster than you know it, I'll be home.
Breathe easy. Choose McAfee.
Just a couple minutes left in this 2-hour show. We're live till 6, so just about 3 minutes. But Matt, obviously, some quick headlines going across the entire world of coaching. Nick Saban, as we mentioned, we broke the news yesterday on the show a little bit over 24 hours ago that he will not be returning to Alabama. So there's a lot of rumors going around. Who will take over the coach for Alabama football? So we lost the greatest college football coach of all time yesterday. You can make an argument that we lost the greatest football coach of all time today. Bill Belichick leaving New England. A lot of rumors and what's up in the air in his future. Certainly something to wonder about as well. Will he try to continue coaching? Could he go interview elsewhere and stay a coach in the National Football League? And obviously some more headlines. Offensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals, Brian Callahan. We mentioned yesterday on the show he had 2 interview positions lined up. He's now up to 5. He's one of the hotter coaches right now on the market. So a lot to pay attention to, especially heading into the weekend. Matt, your thoughts and opinions on it as we close out this show.
Well, I would say when it comes down to Bill Belichick, for at least when you talked about Nick Saban, it seems like there's really no options, and it's not that there's no options. He could pretty much go coach anywhere in college football if he wanted to keep coaching, but
that's a retirement.
That's a retirement for Nick Saban. For Bill Belichick, it seems like there's still conversations, and it's still in a bunch of people's minds, and maybe even in his mind, that maybe I'm going to keep coaching. It's not going to be with New England, but maybe it's somewhere else. And talking about the New England position, you brought it up. There's one person that I think who just lost their job with their team, I feel like could fit the bill pretty well. I think Mike Vrabel wouldn't be a bad option to go to New England.
Former Patriot as well.
Yep, former Patriot. He's coached in college and in NFL. He was a coach at Ohio State. He's coached, obviously, for the Tennessee Titans for quite some time. But there's definitely experience with Mike Vrabel, and I don't think it would be a horrible move to see him be the new head coach of the New England Patriots.
Certainly some things to keep an eye out, especially heading into the weekend. Alongside Matthew Pennington, I'm Jackson Lightcap. Our producer, Kevin Fowler, Caleb Spinner, joined us a little bit ago on this show. Thanks for dealing with us. We're out of here. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next week.